right, so we are live now. Um, we'll switch into the full thing here in like a minute or so. Let's give people some time to come in, and then we'll be good to go. Oh, actually, I guess that means we're live now. All right, here we go. Three, two, one. Yes, there we go. We should be good. How's everybody doing?
Howdy, folks. How is everyone?
Had to iron that out for a second, but we're back and ready to go. We had a bit of a break there, but we have a very special guest, Colton Williams. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself, and you have
Yeah,
some
thank-
big news as well, don't you?
a lot going on. Thanks for having me. Yeah, hey, I'm Colton Williams. Let's see. Make sure my camera's still good here. Colton Williams. I'm a senior at OU, University of Oklahoma. I'm graduating here in 2 or 3 short months. Yeah, 2 short months from graduation. Thankfully, meteorology degree. Been on a broadcast track the entire time I've been at OU. So, yeah, news. I am officially getting going near my home market in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've joined the News Channel 8 their team at KTUL Channel 8 in Tulsa. Yeah, that's a very new move. In fact, my first day in the station was yesterday. And then so that's pretty big time. I'm pretty excited for that and ready to get graduated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was in the Tulsa market for like a job shadow thing at one point in college, but the Tulsa market, for those who don't know, is really it's like it's 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 about like Oklahoma City in that it's highly competitive. So the fact that you landed a Tulsa gig is really cool. Like not a lot of people can grab those.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I feel pretty fortunate to be there. I love my team so far. I'm excited for severe weather season to get going, and things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's been great, and the people of Tulsa have been great. I've had an extremely warm welcome. So
Well, and you're not, a stranger. You've done a lot of broadcast work over the last several years, especially with like OU Nightly. Can you tell us a bit
yeah,
about that kind of stuff?
yeah. So OU Nightly, just assuming everyone that kind of knows what that is, student broadcast, very nationally award-winning student broadcast. Actually, OU Nightly is very successful, and it has gotten more successful in the 4 years that I've been there. So I joined on day one at OU, so way back in August of 2019. Was trying my hardest to get on. And since then, jumped into several opportunities. So anchored OU Nightly for a long time. Started off actually Colin and I similar start in Lawton, Oklahoma at the same station in southwestern Oklahoma. Worked there for like 16 weeks or so. Extremely valuable experience. Which then I eventually flipped and turned around to go to my home market of Oklahoma City over last summer, which literally the time of my life getting to work in Oklahoma City. And then eventually all those things led to this opportunity now. So, been on air in the TV business for over a year now, been on air in college for 4 years now, and now kind of at my permanent landing spot, at least, permanent for the next couple of years. So,
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess to me that experience you can get before you get like actually like knee deep in the market is so important. Like all the internships and stuff. They people always say like when you're in college job hunting and stuff, they're like, oh, get internships. But that really is true. Like it's all about, at least for broadcast, it's all about just getting tons and tons and tons of reps.
Yeah, I
well,
would
and
even
here's the
argue.
thing. Yeah, just here's the thing quickly that I think we were fortunate to capitalize on is, especially going to OU, having all the opportunity we have. most people have got to sign their contract in their small market for the first 2 years. Whereas we had the opportunity to go and spend 16 weeks in the small market, where then we turn around and now we're getting jobs close to home. Exactly. So we don't have to go away for 2 years. We went away for 16 weeks and got that part out of the way. And that was very, very valuable. So, that was something that I was really lucky to have.
Yeah, that's massive. It's kind of like the Pathways program for, I guess, if you want to go into more operational forecasting,
Yeah.
but I'm not personally in broadcast, but from everything that I've seen, that experience seems like it's even more important than, say, practicing operationally, because building that on-camera persona and being able to do that is something that takes a lot of time to be able to develop, and a lot of practice to be able to develop that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think when, like, because obviously you want to get the practice and the internships and stuff, but even to get internships, you kind of need a bit of a foot in the door, and that's one of the things I loved about OU is that we have OU Nightly, and that they just are such a great resource for getting that practice, getting in, and just kind of at least getting your foot in the door as far as actually getting some of those opportunities go.
Well, and connection wise, I mean, we know people who know somebody in pretty much any market. I mean, you could ask for. Yeah, I mean, I knew Nightly was special whenever I got on campus, and so I feel thankful that I was ambitious as I was early on to try to get involved, because I wouldn't have had any of my previous opportunities that eventually led to this one, without that. So.
Well, we actually wanted to highlight some of that wall-to-wall coverage that we did, or that we didn't do. You did, but that we were talking about. We actually talked about on our last episode, and I think both Will and I were just like dumbfounded by how good that wall-to-wall coverage
it was
was.
incredible for the first time, for the first ever wall-to-wall coverage like that. It was done so professionally. It was incredible.
Well, yeah, and not just first of the semester. Like, that was the first of its kind since, in however many years it's been going,
yeah,
right?
well, that's a huge compliment. So that was something that I wanted to implement for a long time. Never really quite had the resources, and I mean, I can't take a large portion of the credit. Coy Taylor, one of our other meteorology students, he's a junior, so he'll be rising to his senior year next year, was really kind of the organizational force behind it. I always knew how to take care of how to talk over the radar and how to talk to people out in the field and how to put reporters in place. But what I was not really good at was the behind the scenes organization. I mean, the day before the event, Coy sent out a 2-page PDF, line by line, time by time. This is when you are on standby. This is when this group of people needs to be ready. This is when you're posting on social media. Like I said, I knew how to handle the on repeats, but as far as the behind the scenes, that was where this was really foreign to me. And so that was extremely helpful. And then, of course, at home, in which I will say, thankfully, I mean, it's hard to say thankfully you get a tornado to strike your community, but like, it almost worked out perfectly that the most damaging tornado day passed 0.6 of a mile from us, And so it's one of those things where, like, and people always say, like, you should get excited about tornadoes. And my kind of opinion is, like, tornadoes are going to happen. So why not be the one to be first on the scene, And so that was sort of like, we were really fortunate that it was a local situation. And then I'm not sure if you guys knew this, but what I had told the team prior to the coverage was, we'll flip on off. I'll help. We'll help out. We'll take some turns. But whenever this thing makes it a little past northeast of Norman, let me take over, because this actually is my hometown, my home territory. I've got family that live all in the region, and that's exactly what happened. So once Norman, everybody else put their focus on Norman. My head was still with my family, with my grandparents, my wife's grandparents, all of that. That's whenever I took over, and like, it all was such a blur. But like, going back and watching, like, I was rattling off like street names and landmarks like I didn't even really remember that I knew where those things were, but it was totally natural. That was to me the most rewarding part of the whole situation was watching it go right towards my hometown, which was something that I really, that's something I can't hardly prepare. Thankfully, it wasn't a big damaging situation. That would have been a different animal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Sure.
well, and that's one of the things I think that's the reason why I think stations are more incentivized to get people for longer, is because the more you're in an area, the more you get to know it, the more you have a better understanding of it, and you can start, calling
Exactly.
out streets and landmarks like you're doing. But like the local aspect is really, really, it's a big factor. And I think
it was.
I actually had a conversation about, like you'd mentioned the thing about like people say we shouldn't get excited for tornadoes and stuff, and I think that is partly true in the sense that if we convey too much excitement, people take that the wrong way. But people
Agreed, yeah.
take everything the wrong way. But I had a conversation with some of my older colleagues, and they both, had mentioned like, yeah, once you've been doing this so many years, it's not exciting anymore. It's just like a pain in the neck, essentially, or it's just kind of a tiring thing. And I understand that. I think I am very glad that we're all still young and unburdened by, I guess, too much experience or something. But that's something I hope none of us ever lose, is how excited we get over it, because it's not like we're excited about the death and destruction. I think I can speak for all three of us when I say we're excited about like the science aspect of it and the natural phenomenon aspect.
And like I don't think everybody gets that boat eventually. I think there's people who get burnt out. If it's in a news station, then that's probably a station that you'd be working at and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
because like I know people who have been at stations for 20 and 30 years that still don't even think they're going to work. And like, that's where I strive to be one day, is to be somewhere, which like, I've been really lucky about my team, because like the first conversation I had with my new chief meteorologist, we were on the phone for like over an hour, and we were talking about here's kind of how we poise ourselves for long-term success. And like what he told me, like he said, I need you happy. He said, I need your wife happy. So use your time off. Like, do not come in here and get burnt out. And, do not let yourself come in here and dread coming to the place. That's bad for you. That's bad for everybody. And not all chief meteorologists and not all news stations have that outlook. They want to, be proud of the fact that we're some of the best experts in the world at this. And so they want to utilize us. So they kind of lose sight of the fact that we're people too. And so that's one thing that I've been really thankful for. But I mean, you can look at some of the really talented weather teams around the country and figure out who's burnt out and who's not, because there's a lot that are and there's a lot that aren't. And the people that aren't, after they've been there for a long time, that's where I want to be. I don't want to be somewhere it's a routine pain in the butt to go into work, all that,
Yeah.
That's just not for me,
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there has to be a balance, because otherwise it is just unhealthy. And I'm very thankful that I'm in a good situation myself as well. But I do know that some people lose their spark a little sooner than others.
Well,
that's just the news environment, though.
That goes for any field, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we went to school with people who went to TV that are already getting out because they're burnt out,
Mm-hmm.
and Will, to your point, with any environment, I speak for TV because that's what I'm comfortable with. I could see becoming heavy really fast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying my work environment's bad. I'm not saying at all. I love my job. Everything's great there. But for some people, I can see like my work shift is 10 to 12 hours, 4 days on, 4 days off, night shift for me at least. And even though that, you get that 4 day off, staying up till 6 o'clock in the morning, no matter what, sometimes that's just really gonna make it drag. And if there's no weather going on, you're like, man, why am I awake right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the commonality between any meteorology job. It's like like the weather doesn't care about 9 to 5. You're probably gonna have some weird hours.
Oh yeah, I've had one night where I was calling in tornado warnings until 4 o'clock in the morning one time over the summer. It was a hectic night.
Dang.
Well,
That's
the
rough.
thing too is if people at home see that, they'll turn on their TV and they'll say, "Man, that weather team is still here. It's 2:30 in the morning." For every person that's on TV and it's 2:30 in the morning, there's 4 or 5 or 6 operational meteorologists that are at work too that aren't on TV. And that's sometimes people forget that. And so, that's a very important aspect, I think, of what we do that sometimes is a little underappreciated by some of the public.
Like Colin says, the weather doesn't sleep.
Well, and that's true. And the unfortunate thing about TV is when are people watching TV? Well, when they're not at work. And so when the typical work hours are the dead hours for TV. So then our prime time comes the non-typical work hours, if that makes sense.
I will say,
Yeah.
this is kind of a question. This is kind of a question for both of you then. Have
Yeah.
you seen a change in that with the advent and the rise of streaming services and being able to watch news at any time? Have you guys like seen a tangible change in that at all?
Do you want to field this one, Colton, or can I?
Yeah, I'll first. So
Okay, go ahead.
I think traditional TV isn't changing a lot yet. I don't think. I think it's probably going to. There is unlimited access to weather information. One of the things is, though, especially like in my market, which this kind of gives me some security, is like no matter how quickly you can find your high and low, whenever it comes down to business and it's time to, you're in a dangerous situation, then the people will turn to the television. And so I think that access has been expanded. Used to, if you wanted to get on and watch your wall-to-wall coverage, you had to get on your TV. And what happened if you lost power or if your antenna went out? You were kind of screwed. Whereas now, you just jump on your phone, And so I think that expansion is a good aspect for us. But I think before we know it, some of the national networks, you can get on CBS News 24 hours a day and find an anchor that's sitting there anchoring some news. And that is the world we're beginning to live in. So is that going to transcend down to weather? I don't know. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, so I have, I guess, a bit of a different perspective on this. I'm not sure about any of the the numbers or stuff of streaming, but I know with pretty solid certainty that most people our age, like the Gen Z millennial generation, don't sit down and turn on the news on their TV.
Yeah.
Most of our generation gets it through their phone. I think just by necessity, by like free market necessity, we're going to see a big shift towards mobile streaming. But like you say, the weather, everybody needs the weather at some point. Whether it's, do I need a raincoat today, or is the tornado warning north or south of me? So it's like,
well, my favorite one is when people say, like, oh, well, my weather app said it was going to be 68 today, and it's 4 p.m. And why is it 40 degrees? And it's like, okay, so that's why you would tune into the weather. You've seen there's a cold front on the way. Like those are kind of like the niche circumstances where everybody still kind of gets bit by their little weather app.
Yeah, I think we got a long way to go as far as catching up to streaming and social media, but I think the future of our industry is definitely there. I think just by necessity, because a lot of our generation doesn't use just like sit down and watch cable TV.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to transition a bit into some of that wall-to-wall coverage from February 26th. So I've got the broadcast that you sent me pulled up. We're starting about an hour in. So as I pull this up, do you want to kind of give us a rundown of like the timeline of events and kind of what that looked like?
Sure. Yeah. Well, am I able to see that?
Oh,
If not, you just
Remember we did this through Discord.
yes. Okay. Yeah, it's
follow
supposed
along.
to come through. It's supposed to come through.
Give me a
on stream
timestamp,
notes.
and I'll follow along.
Well, I can. If you're still in the Discord, I can stream it into the.
Yep, I got you. That'll work.
Okay, there we go. I'll pull this back up. All right, cool. So yeah, so this is about almost an hour in, and the storm is to the west of Oklahoma City right now. We have. It's what's that?
Okay.
What's that polygon over Hinton?
So the purple one means that it's a tornado. Barron implemented that within the last couple of years, where you have the option to change your polygons. Like if you see the peach color polygon is different than the typical yellow-orange polygon to the north, because that's a destructive severe thunder warning. Now, I will tell you, after this event, we went through kind of a rehash of the event, and we decided to transition away from that peach-colored polygon because it is somewhat confusing. Not everybody knows what that means. And so now, if for the future of OU Nightly, when this kind of coverage happens, all severe thunderstorm warnings will look the same regardless of their intensity, but we have elected to keep the confirmed tornado warnings purple. So That's what that is.
Cool. Yeah, I was honestly I wasn't sure what the purple meant, but
for sure. That was a recent update, I think, in the last few years of the National Weather Service implementing that. I can definitely see how that'd be confusing, maybe to the public, not been so conditioned to see, red is tornado, yellow is severe thunderstorm.
Yeah. That's
felt
true.
like it was not important to delineate the severity of severe thunderstorms, but to delineate the severity of tornado warnings, kind of a different story, I guess. That was kind of our opinion.
Okay. So we're going to go sound off for a minute just to kind of let it run.
Yeah.
But go ahead and I guess keep going with that timeline there. We have this is relatively early in the evening, considering this was a nighttime event.
And not only that, this we kicked on our first cut in at 6:30 p.m. because storms were beginning to approach the Oklahoma border. And if you notice, this is now just 2 hours later, and they're knocking on the door of the metro. These storms were hauling, and they were hard to keep up with on radar. That's one thing that I vividly remember from the whole scenario, was that we were having a tough time keeping up with them because they were moving so quickly.
Do you have an estimate for us on how fast they were going? Or am I positive?
Oh gosh, any of the warnings would go anywhere from 70 to 90 mile per hour storm motion. Where even a one time that had over 100 miles per hour. And so, I mean, when that's tracking across counties in 40 minutes, and so at this period, this is where we knew things were really, like, this was kind of our Super Bowl was getting ready to get going here as it moved into the metro, especially with the TVS on radar that's moving towards campus. And that was kind of our goal, was to be the only media source that was solely focused on campus, which actually worked out great, because at the time of the Norman tornado, there was 2 other warnings in Oklahoma County, and all the other stations, rightfully so, right, because it's their responsibility, were bouncing between those 3 warnings, whereas we stayed focused on Norman 1. As a result, we beat 2 of the 3 stations in Oklahoma City to the campus warning.
Wow.
So if that gives you an idea, as our focus was on campus, and it paid off in dividends.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point, about just especially in the Plains area, Tornado Alley, when we have these big squall line storms, QLCS, quasi-linear
convective system. Okay.
There you go.
The C always catches me. I always want to say cell, and I know that's wrong. So yeah, we get these big, like, long spanning systems, and the bigger it is, the more coverage some of these bigger stations have to do. So that is really.
Did it surprise you at all that you had those QLCS tornadoes back off to the north and west? Did it surprise you guys at all that the Norman cell actually kind of evolved into almost a semi-discrete supercell in a way?
Yeah.
So if we bounce forward in the coverage just a little bit, I think it was, if I remember, and like I said, the whole night was a blur. So shortly after this moment, I switched off with Catherine Liberta. She took on right here probably next 5 minutes or so. And as I was stepping off, I was watching on radar, and I walked over to the weather desk, and I told the two other meteorologists there, I said, that signature terrifies me because it started separating and it took on a really, really scary shape. Like it took all night. We had kind of talking about like, well, if we go into tornado warning, we're going to take shelter in here, but the tornado won't be that intense. And then whenever I saw that signature, I was like, whoa, that is kind of like a classic supercell, more so than a QLCS tornado. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to think about where you bounce forward to like 120, 125, Colin. And you may be able to see it on radar. I didn't mention it on
Actually,
air
yeah, that's about right.
Until after.
Yeah.
Until after I stepped off. But yeah, it was a scary signature.
So I do want to recap for folks who might have missed the last episode. We talked about because we had a week we took off. The week before that, we talked about this event, and that was one of the first things you mentioned. Will was like, yeah, we have this like QLCS, and it just kind of became its own like quasi cell, like singular. It was bizarre. It was. I haven't seen something like that.
I think the low level wind shear had to play a huge role in that. I mean, some of those the low level wind shear values were some of the I don't want to say best because it's not best, but in terms from a pure like atmospheric environment, like that just screams
something weird happened for that to. Here, I can go ahead and.
Yeah, so you can kind of see if you look just east of Chickasha, where the line becomes a lot skinnier. That's where I think it was trying to start doing some separation there. You can kind of see an inflow notch there southeast of Amber Pocasset there on I-44.
Mm-hmm.
It was really sucking in some warm, moist air and was becoming mean.
Yeah.
And that lined up too, actually, because some of our hail reports from the night, which by the way, we know this wasn't going to be a large damaging hail event, but some of our hail reports came on Interstate 44, 20 something miles northeast of Chickasha, which lines up right there. I mean, that makes sense. So.
Mm-hmm. I think we were talking about the speed earlier too. I think one of the challenges I imagine with this system was not only like just the intense speed that it was booking it with, but also like the radar delay. I imagine that was kind of a problem.
We were mentioning that pretty frequently on air, where we were saying, okay, this is where the cell was 2 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's 2 minutes ago. If they're moving 90 miles an hour, so 2 minutes ago was 3 miles ago, right? And so that's what we kept mentioning, that every minute this radar scan gets older, the less and less valuable it is. I will say we did lose power around 9 o'clock, and after that we lost our warnings on our radar. That became challenging because from there on we just turned them off once we discovered that they were broken. Right there we lose power. So we lose power. Somehow we stayed live. Don't ask me how. I don't know how we.
That doesn't. That doesn't make sense, but.
And then we come back. We have no warnings, and so if you'll notice, the next time I jumped on, once we knew we had no warning, I just grabbed my iPad and I pulled up radar scope, and that way I could at least know where the warnings were.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a hem-haul solution, but it worked. Yeah, there was some confusion here.
Yeah, for sure. I was watching the OU South Oval live stream as that storm was getting close.
Oh yeah, actually, I do want to backtrack a bit. We have
you
had some South Oval coverage.
And I remember seeing the power flicker. I was like, "Whoa, that never happens there."
we call this our campus cam, and we use it frequently, and it actually was really helpful that night. So
there's the lightning off. Dang.
Yeah, for folks that don't know, this camera is angled off to the northwest.
Yeah, so
you can't
the library is dead north, or
Yeah,
basically
and so
north.
yeah, and so we saw a little bit before it approached, but it kind of approached from our blind side on that. So
The
and
lightning
then
on
yeah,
the cam was almost constant before it moved in. It was incredible to see.
so Colin, back this up just a little
Yeah,
bit.
we're
I'll
at
kind of explain to you. Back up a little more. You don't have to go very far because they were moving really quick.
right here.
When let's back up just a tad more if I'm on. I don't remember when I got on. I got on whenever I started getting concerned about my family, and I'll explain why.
Yeah.
So Catherine's on here. Okay, so we let this play out. So she's just kind of rehashing the situation. My wife was actually in the control room, and so I told Catherine to hop on, ran in there, and asked her to talk to one of our friends who got hit, and then to start calling our grandparents, because the way the line set up was it was going to hit Norman, and then it was going to go to my grandparents, and then to her grandparents, and then to her hometown. It was like a perfect line.
Oh,
and so
man.
then it was all about, figuring out who it was going to hit and who it was going to miss.
I do want to point out, since I had it pulled up, like, you, again, just the sheer speed of this thing. Look where the warnings are in comparison to the line. Like,
yeah, and that's, we had only lost warnings for a few minutes at this point. And so this is about when we discovered that our warnings had broken. And so that's when I just grabbed the iPad and decided just to, kind of make it work.
Okay, so these were the old warnings before it crashed?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever warnings were on, we lost power. That's what would have remained up all night if we had left them on. Once we figured they were old, we took them off.
Okay. I misunderstood. I was thinking it was moving fast enough that the warnings were only out a few minutes before it was. I guess that's kind of
what
part
I thought.
of it.
Every couple minutes that went by, I got more suspicious, and we figured out that they were broken. Okay. So,
all right, I'll go ahead and let this rip.
I know we kind of talked about it a little bit in the last episode, Colin, but this is in events like this where the storms are moving so quickly. This is just another example of where phased array radar is going to become so huge in the coming years.
Yeah, we got a long way to go as far as this goes, but this is why, when you hear, like, hey, you're under a tornado warning, or you hear the sirens go off or your phone goes off or whatever, you don't, I'll peek my head out, and if it looks bad, I'll go. Like, you got to just go, because especially when they move this quick, it's like
James Spann always says, respect the polygon.
Yes. It's like, if it's moving this quick, once that warning drops, you need to go.
So this radar screen grab right here, every one of those. So I live in Prague, Oklahoma, which is, you can see there, it's kind of center right of the screen. So that's where I grew up. That's where I went to high school. That's where my family lives. And so all these surrounding towns, not only do I know very well, but I know people in them. Shawnee, where my wife's grandparents live, and all these little, like that little community of Johnson. I have family that live out that way. I know the area so well, and so as a result, I was comfortable, but this was still kind of nerve-wracking. And if you can see here where I draw the warning, because we didn't have warnings, and so this was kind of our next best option, and it actually came off pretty good. I thought this was one of our cooler moments where we kind of used our ingenuity to figure it out.
Yeah, this is definitely a highlight of the stream. I remember.
Yeah,
because this is about where I tuned in when y'all were drawing the polygons yourself.
Yeah. Just trying to digest and see if I remember exactly what was going on. So kind of what happened at this point was, it was more, I was kind of watching where this thing was going, because that was personally concerning to me. Everybody else, which this worked out great, they were working on campus damage and obtaining photos and things like that. So it worked out really good, because I would kind of blab on for a minute about what was happening, and then they would update me about, okay, well, we've learned that there are power lines down at this gas station. We've learned that this gas station no longer has a roof. This apartment complex was partially destroyed. It was really great, because they could focus on the damage while I was focusing on the storm.
Actually, I do want to throw a question out to you. Were you ever in contact with Clazel about?
No, because he was just as busy.
I kind of figured, but I wasn't sure if there was.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what the protocol for that was. For those who don't know, Dr. Kevin Clazel's the campus meteorologist and emergency manager, and so usually in a situation like this, he's also about just as busy. So
you wouldn't believe it.
I did learn later. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say you wouldn't believe it by what OU students say on Twitter, but he's the absolute best at his job.
Oh yeah,
he is. Yes, absolutely. I did learn later that he was watching after at campus, so he was tuning in more than he was chiming in. But
no pressure, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, but so right here, that shear rate swath is.
I'm actually gonna pause that and go back a minute. So shear rate isn't something a lot of people use a lot, and I'm really glad you used it there. Can you tell maybe the folks at home a bit about shear rate and why you decided to use it in this event?
Shear rate is a Barron product. It's a product that's exclusive to Barron, which, regardless of some news stations will tell you, no, they're not the only news station that has shear rate. Anybody who has Barron has shear rate. But it's a way more easily visualized like rotation couplets in the atmosphere, because I think Oklahomans are pretty good at looking at velocity and the green and the red touch each other, but shear rate really paints it in a much prettier way, which we learned here because shear is typically explaining just simply that, like how much shear, how much coupling is going on in the atmosphere. Whereas with this event, we kind of said there was so much convergence along the leading edge that it was detecting a lot of shear, where we didn't really think that was necessarily shear, but it was damaging winds, so it was just as important to show. So typically you use it to pick out rotation, and here it was more looking at finding convergence than anything, but it was still useful. So.
Yeah, like you mentioned, shear rate is a Barron-only product. You can get some decent substitutes from like Pivotal. I don't know if COD has.
Yeah, if anyone has experience with, say, the Gibson Ridge products, Gibson Ridge Analyst 2 has NROT, which is just normalized rotation, which is a kind of a similar thing. There's different ways to calculate these things, but
yeah, but yes, this like you mentioned, because the velocity, those can get really messy, especially in these big QLCS systems. QLCS.
It doesn't help when they're moving 100 miles an hour.
Yes, like the velocity just turns into spaghetti when you can't see anything. So shear rate is a good product for these long spanning systems.
Yeah, and systems moving that quickly. Typically, what we look at when we're looking at rotation in a storm is base velocity, and that's simply just looking at how fast particles that are being scanned are essentially moving towards or away from the radar. And when storms are moving that fast, everything's moving towards the radar, regardless of whether or not it's spinning or not.
Yes.
So it's very, very hard to pick that out.
Yes, velocity gets
Colin,
really... Go ahead.
I'm going to shoot you a screenshot. So basically, shear rate literally just finds areas on the radar where the green and the red touch each other, which, rudimentary meteorology says that that's where there's rotation, right? If there's strong red and strong green touching each other, that's where you're going to have circulation, right? Normally, that's exactly right. Whereas in an event like this, that's where we saw what I just sent you. If there's a way for you to pull that up.
Where did you send it?
I sent it to you in Discord, I think.
Discord.
Hold on. Oh no.
Okay, I was gonna say I'm not seeing it.
There you go. So what happened on this night? I just went and grabbed this from that night. You can see if you pull that up. Let me get back to you real fast.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead.
That's some impressive stuff there.
Okay, there we go.
So this is the exact same timestamp we were seeing along that shear rate. So go back to the coverage and find that shear rate. if you can, and then look how it compares. That shear rate line, if you find it with that. So right there. Okay, so that shear rate line, and then now go to my
Oh my gosh,
screenshot.
yeah, I see what you're talking about.
So that's what it was detecting. The shear rate the entire time was just detecting the velocity colors. I mean, that's a elementary, but the colors were touching each other, and so shear rate thought it was rotating, but what we actually had was a very, very powerful bow echo.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah, and there's that's the point, right? Is like this velocity, you don't see a couplet there. Like you see
exactly,
something,
right.
but that could just be that could be straight line burst. But when you yep, very 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 neat.
You could overlay those images into each other, and
well, yeah, well, there's McLeod,
see,
right?
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
seeing
there's
these velocities that close to the radar is really really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I can query that because that little dark orange spot just north of I-40 there is queried at one. I get 101.8 is the max I can find in there, and
that's not very far off the ground.
Yes, yes.
It's 11 miles from the radar to 600 feet off the ground.
Oh yeah.
So so maybe as a bit of an explainer for folks who may not be familiar, like the center here where the radar is, and like you probably know it looks really messy around close to the radar, and that's because radars point up at a tilt. If they didn't, they would get every tree and building. So they point up at a tilt. So the fact that this is so close to the radar, picking up this much velocity, means that it's a really you get it, right? It's very powerful to be that close to the radar and still picking up, and also very close to the ground because the closer to the radar source, the less height you get from that initial tilt. So
rare to see that speed 100 miles away from the radar, where the radar beam is way up in the atmosphere, but to see that close to the is concerning.
Yeah, that's also the reason why oftentimes for folks who don't know, when we're looking at radar, if we're looking a decent way away from the radar and there's a couplet where we think might be a tornado, we can never fully confirm that tornado. Now there's some substitutes if you see a debris ball and whatnot, but that's getting into the weeds. Because you're looking up in the atmosphere, you can have circulation aloft that's not making it to the ground. That happens quite often in almost every supercell that exists. So you can never fully rely on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a cool screenshot.
Yeah,
that's a really cool. I'm glad you grabbed that because that's a great comparison with the shear right there
to figure out why the shear. Because again, we say all the time, well, if you see the colors here, that means it's spinning, and on that night, that wasn't necessarily the case. So. But so, Colin, jump forward a little bit in the coverage here. I'll talk you through some of the things that I know kind of with hindsight now, if you're curious. So as this rotation is approaching Shawnee, again, Shawnee's a community I know very well. I mean, for context, I mean, I grew up in Central Oklahoma. It was the nearest Walmart, so anytime we need to go to Walmart, we went to Shawnee. Okay, so there's a university there, there's a mall there, and so right here, this is great, this is perfect. So there's a debris ball, which folks, on radar you can detect if there's debris lost into the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So play this out just a little bit, Colin.
Okay, I'm gonna go back just a hair so we can get the context for it.
Yeah, perfect. So we're watching this velocity. So I'm naming off Garrett's Lake Road. I mean, I've got family that live on Garrett's Lake Road. Okay, wow. So I'm knowing that they're watching, but I know this area really well. Okay, Johnson, there's Ekentucky. That's a place called Ekentucky, and Garden Grove. There's a church out at Garden Grove. There's a couple actually. And so as I'm watching this, I'm thinking of all the people that I know, and now we see the debris ball. And so in my head, I'm going, okay, well, this is cleared so-and-so's house, but this is still going to so-and-so's house. As this radar image advances, which I think does quickly, as it makes it to that intersection of Garrett's Lake Road and Harrison, that's where it causes a total loss to a house of somebody in my wife's family. And I didn't know it at the time. So, it's just like that was just kind of the surrealness of this whole thing was like, you know, that's what happens in these events. Thankfully, everybody was okay, you know. But right there, as that debris ball is crossing Harrison Avenue, which is Highway 18, that's where it's causing, you know, severe damage to a household of people that I know really well. And so, thankfully, that was the only, you know, kind of family member that was struck that night. But you know, I mean, it happened, so it was still pretty sad.
Mm-hmm. I do want to ask you, because I haven't, thankfully, I mean, it's going to happen eventually, but I haven't had a very serious, severe situation on air yet. How,
Yeah.
like, and I know that that's intense and hard on you, even if you didn't, you know anybody in the area, but then to also have this be like your home turf and you know all these people affected by this, how do you even process that and like still do your job while also what's that like?
Yeah. Well, okay, it would have been different if this was like if we were looking at like a, you know, like a Piedmont, Oklahoma, or an El Reno, Oklahoma, or a Moore, Oklahoma situation tracking through my hometown. I mean, that would have been a different ballgame. I mean, all things considered, you know, this event could have been a lot worse. And so that helped me really more so in this moment. I was thinking about, because, you know, on OU Nightly, you know, all the time we're on here and we're, you know, are there a lot of people watching, you know, especially an event like this, you know, who's paying attention to our coverage? When it got to this moment, there had been people that I had told, like, you need to tune in after it passes the metro because that's when it's coming to you. So at this moment, I'm thinking that there's actually people watching who like are actually heeding advice. And so more so at that moment, I was concerned with being as quick and accurate as possible. I wasn't really worried about the destruction at the time. I was more kind of focusing my brain power on talking to those people. You know, I can't talk to them personally because there could be more of them watching, but talking to those people, telling people exactly where this is at, using landmarks that are in the area that I know that other people recognize, to kind of give them the best warning possible. So really, it really was in the back of my mind about damage, you know, because it hadn't happened yet. If it had happened, then I think emotionally it would have been a lot different. But more so, I was worried about the warning than I was the consequences, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to just keep going here, or do you want to?
Yeah, keep going here because this thing moves fast. And I'm just naming off landmarks. There's small communities. Belmont technically doesn't exist anymore. Garden Grove is really just a church. Ekentucky is still a little old community. Johnson is actually still a town, so I know people that live there. At this moment, I'm wondering how much is it going to turn north. I'm watching my hometown of Prague. In fact, here we do a storm track. Eventually, this thing actually fairly northerly turn. And ultimately, in fact, I think it's the debris ball probably ends up exiting our little warning, our little come here, because it turned northward. So once it did that, I was much more comfortable that it wasn't going to hit, you know, my hometown.
Well, and so, at least
right here.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, like right here, I'm pointing at my hometown on the map, you know, and like saying, you know, you need to be ready in, you know, 10 minutes for this thing to be at your doorstep. And that was kind of surreal.
So when it turns north, right, it wasn't just like, oh, hey, it's not heading towards my area again. It was also, I imagine, like, hey, we're going to get a bit more inflow. It's going to pull back a bit and kind of...
Well, and all of that, just because it wasn't going to my house, doesn't mean that it wasn't going to houses of people that I know.
Yeah,
of course. I know people, you know, that. So right here, it's in Pottawatomie County. It crosses north into Lincoln County. I mean, I can name 24 people off the top of my head who live near that county line. And so regardless of where it turned, it was still concerning to me. It wasn't like turned away and I was go, okay, you know, we're good. We can get off of it now.
Yeah.
You know, I like to think that I would take this with any level of severity, regardless of if it's hitting my hometown. But I was still focused on it, you know, I think rightfully so.
But was there an expectation that now that we have a bit more northerly storm motion will get more of the choking inflow to kind of put a leash on this thing? Was that
I think on that particular couplet, we worried about it, but the way this line had progressed all night long was every time circulation died, a new one formed to the south.
okay?
Which, if you jump forward 5 or 6 minutes, and that's exactly what happens. So this couplet, this debris ball ends up turning north. In fact, you can see there. So stop right there on that CC. Yeah. So the debris ball actually becomes quite intense, which whenever it becomes as spread out as this is where we really think it's more debris that's lofted. So it's obviously not a mile-wide tornado.
No.
But then if you jump forward, keep jumping a little forward there. So obviously that debris is going to miss Prague, right? But then as we update a little more, we keep going and we keep going a little bit. Go there. So now we're directly south of Prague. And if we hit shear rate here, somewhere soon. And there's shear rate, and there's more intense shear rate just south of town, which is what kind of continued to happen all night. Was we would have one area of circulation die and a new one would form to the south. And so that's what we were more concerned with.
That's bizarre. Or in the sense that, like, it's a QLCS, but it kind of behaves like a singular cell, but then it does and it doesn't. I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, to Will's point earlier, the wind shear was just off the charts this night, and I think that would tell you a little bit about a storm's ability to stay alive, regardless of if it has one or two circulations. I mean, that's kind of the way I see it. But
yeah, and I think also with kind of almost right over Oklahoma City, this thing started to, as it approached, almost started to develop almost a mesoscale convective vortex type signature with it. And I think once that really took hold, everything kind of became more QLCS-y again, for lack of a better word. But yeah, I can't believe that somebody put a sounding out 20 minutes before the tornado went through. I mean, that's got to be some of the most data-rich sounding environment.
That person, like, good on him. That was the good thinking to get that sounding out there. Actually, we looked at that on the last episode. It was I might see if we can pull that up again here in a bit once we get through some of this coverage. But that yeah. But yeah, so oh, go ahead.
No, just keep going.
Okay.
I think we're really lucky that this wasn't in May for sure.
Yeah, no, that's what we were saying all night. Could you imagine this situation wasn't February? Like, this could be bad. Like, derecho wise, supercell wise, could have been bad. Here was our first look at some of the damage, which I eventually went out and flew my drone over all that. I don't know if you guys saw any of that.
I haven't.
With some significant damage at Norman. I can send you a quick, if we want to move away and kind of talk about damage.
Yeah, sure.
From my last 10 minutes or so here.
Yeah, I forgot to mention at the start of the episode, Colton does have to head out probably a bit early, but we wanted to just pick his brain and get all his thoughts before we have to see him go.
And hopefully before the next one of these happens.
Yes.
We could be doing this again, which of course now, I've got some obligations at my station, so who knows, this could have been my last kind of hurrah on
well, and what a hurrah it was, man.
I know.
Well,
go
ahead.
I can quit happy now, Okay, I just sent you so this was just a quick cut of some damage, and honestly some of this isn't even the best footage, but it was a little windy that day.
Okay. Uh-oh. It says not for redistribution or not for rebroadcast.
It's not.
Well,
I gotta hang on. I gotta call the guy and make sure this is okay.
Let's not jump into that debate.
Maybe I can consent.
Okay.
Boy, Weather Twitter was up in arms over that one a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the point here is that's the church, and the steeple is there on the yard out there on the left side of the screen. The steeple was picked up and thrown.
Wow!
Inside that church.
Yeah, I didn't even
catch
that.
Yeah, and then here's some roof damage. Some storage units, which I end up getting better. If you look towards the top of the screen, you can see how some of those units are totally leveled.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go back the next day to get those, but I got some really close up of those. But storage units, a lot of people's stuff, which
Yeah. Oh, I did not mean to do that. So
that's fine.
This is okay. These units are completely leveled. Some damage, and then there's some damage here. Which direction is this facing?
Sporadic. So we're looking pretty much due south, right?
Okay.
So kind of the southern flank and the southwestern corner was what took the big hit.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's for people who don't fully know what you see. Like people tend to think of the condensation funnel of a tornado being the tornado. The actual tornadic wind field is wider than that, and so the damage path will be a little bit wider than that. And also, there's what we call rear flank downdraft that tends to wrap around the backside, and it can sometimes wrap in front of the tornado. That can produce some pretty severe straight line wind damage as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That was a big challenge here. That's a good point, Will, because the Weather Service even was talking to them. They were saying that it's been challenging with this event to figure out wind damage and what was tornado damage. Because when you're dealing with wind damage, it's upwards of 100 miles per hour. And then now you sprinkle in some tornado damage, it becomes difficult to figure out which.
I paused it to
play it out a little here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
I was just gonna say I paused it here to highlight that only one half of all the roof shingles actually got it, and that's a good indicator of.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's pretty good damage there on that house.
Trying to think here. Like I said, some of this footage was, I went back the next day and shot more, but I posted this, so.
Oh, there's the on cue.
This was that on cue that took a lot of damage, which you can't see a lot of it from the air. Those power lines, a lot of them are down. You can't really tell.
Mm-hmm.
From here.
that poor on cue is like what, 3 months old, 4 months old?
It's not that old,
No. So here, this is 8:30 in the morning, and there's nobody driving over Highway 9, which, by the way, pretty much locked up Norman.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bad couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
So some home damage here, which there was some more damage. Yeah, that's some of the most severe stuff from the whole scenario. So I mean, that's significant stuff that you wouldn't typically be worried about for a QLCS event, which is why I think this was pretty historic, was because we had a QLCS event where then we had sort of a individual supercell form that ultimately turned into deaths. So thankfully, no deaths in Norman.
Yes. But, yes. We kind of talked about this the last time we covered this, Will and I, and obviously we're not in the business of trying to do the weather survey team's job for him or anything. But if you had to hazard a guess, what do you think this rating would be?
For me?
Yeah.
Again, not in the business, not an expert on this.
Yep.
Total removal of a roof is EF3 damage, and I saw that at least 2 different places. But I do know that this rounded out as a EF2 tornado. So whatever they use as their distinction, like I said, is to their discretion because they're the experts. To me, they would have called this EF2 or EF3, but it ultimately was sort of a high-end EF2. I don't know if that's a popular opinion or not. I actually have heard a lot of the debate on this tornado. But
what was the official?
Our first indication, it was a high-end EF2. I think it was the final.
Yeah. What was the? Oh no, that was the final.
That was the final indication on it.
Wow. Makes sense to me.
That's probably some, I'm not sure what the building quality was of some of these homes and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's why we always want to like preface. Yeah, we don't know what we're talking about. We're just kind of guessing. There's people who are much better trained for this sort of thing. That, well, shoot, man, I know you said probably off around 2. Is that your time for the day?
All right.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
have to bounce.
before you do, we'll make this super super quick because it's this has been an ongoing thing. So we'll go ahead and do this right there. So we have a poll among guests because Twister is such a hot topic. People either love or hate it, except for Ben, who's neutral. Where do you stand?
I grew up in central Oklahoma with a love for the atmosphere, and part of that is because of the movie Twister. So I'm definitely pro Twister. Yes, you can think it's cheesy all you want. You think it's cheesy. It's a movie from the 90s, okay?
Yeah.
That's how they're supposed to be. And part of my inspiration for being in weather is the chief meteorologist in Oklahoma City for many, many years before, when I was growing up. Gary England, and his cameo is in the front of the movie, and so I will always be pro Twister.
I love that cameo.
Can't wait for Twister 2. So
I am glad to mark you in the camp of the righteous, my friend.
Send anybody who goes in the anti-category my way.
Okay.
That's not right.
Well, our plan eventually is to have a little Twister debate, but so far everybody's been pro Twister except for Ben, was neutral. So, but I know they're out there. I know there are people who vehemently hate it. So we'll get them.
That's pretty foreign to me. But
all right, man. Well, guys, hey, do you want to plug your Twitter or anything you're up to before you head out?
Sure. Yeah.
And we'll have it in the description as well when we re-upload this.
Especially if you want the latest on all things Tulsa, that's kind of where I'll be next. So, Twitter and Facebook, all that, you can find me at WX Colton. Pretty easy, pretty simple. I was verified before you could buy being verified, so I that was my claim to fame. But now anybody can be verified, so it's kind of ignorant. But I'm legacy verified.
Legacy.
Old some way.
You were grandfathered in.
Yeah. So.
All right, man. Thank you so much. We've enjoyed having you. We can't wait to get you on again. And we really want to congratulate you on that stellar coverage.
Yeah,
that's good stuff,
Thanks,
man. All right, take care.
See y'all.
See ya.
Thanks again. Bye.
See ya.
All right. We'll go ahead and switch back to us. Yeah, so that was Colton Williams. We love that guy. Great. Him and
his coverage.
Just,
yeah, it was so good. So good.
I'm not sure why the box is messed up size-wise, but I'll fix that here.
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned last time, their coverage was done exceptionally to the level of a professional news organization. Like they mentioned, they are focused on the OU campus, so they were kind of on that storm. Vividly remember some other news stations were and rightfully so. There were damaging tornadoes that were happening to the north, back to the northwest, kind of due west of OKC along I-40. And so they were rightfully watching that stuff, but they were one of the first people to get on that Norman cell for sure.
And I do want to shout out, like Colton did an amazing job, but everybody on the OU Nightly team did fantastic that night.
I mean, holding it together when the power went out and then jumping back into
Coy, Catherine, Duncan, everybody did
incredible stuff.
A great job.
Much. I wasn't in the broadcast side of things, but they did a fantastic job. And they got bright futures wherever they end up. In the
yes, absolutely. Well, I guess we can go ahead and introduce our next little tidbit here. We have a couple new segments we're going to try and do. One of which I'm currently making a stinger for, like a little intro video. Didn't finish that, ran out of time this morning, unfortunately, but it'll come eventually, and maybe when it might be done by the time I re-upload and I can just kind of squeeze it in there. But we have a new segment called Based Reflectivity, which is going to be our hot takes and opinions segment. And today's topic, because it was so apt and timely, was daylight saving time. So, Will, why don't you tell me your thoughts on daylight saving time?
Boy, am I ready for this, because I have some thoughts.
I know you do.
I might be the contrarian to this. It's not a big deal. I don't understand why people complain about it. You change your clocks twice a year. Who cares? Do you want sunrise at 10:30 in the morning? I sure as heck don't. I think it's perfectly fine. It balances out when look, I don't want the sun setting at 9:30 p.m. either. That's too late. That by that time I'm already winding down. And if there's still light outside, I'm going to be tempted to do something crazy. I don't know what. It's going to throw me off. I'm going to turn into a werewolf or something. I don't understand why people are so up in arms about changing the clocks twice a year. Now, meteorology, I understand, because now when we go into daylight savings time, models come in an hour later, which kind of sucks. But for the general public, it doesn't really change anything. You lose an hour of sleep one night, but guess what? You gain it back in the winter. You get it back. It's just a rental. They give it back to you.
It's just a rental. Daylight savings time, just a rental. Brought to you by Will Courtright. All right, so I didn't really get to do too much research into this, but the idea, at least with this segment, is we kind of weigh the pros and cons, and I'm cheating and using procon.org because, like I said, I didn't get too much time to research this. But I'm kind of where Will is. I don't think it matters. I think people need to suck it up, Buttercup, and yeah. So, well, some of the history behind this, I guess, starts with World War I, which is my favorite period of history to study. So I am a bit biased as well. But it was part of the wartime effort so that we weren't burning as much coal or fuel to heat homes and things, which makes sense. When you're in wartime and you need to save all your oil and coal and whatnot for the front lines. So, started in World War I, reinstituted in World War II, and then once again in the 70s, all wartime things. But we don't. It's like, okay, well, we're not in wartime right now, so why do we need it? Well, this to me is the interesting thing, right? So, 2020 poll, 55% Americans are not disrupted. 28 minor disruption, 13 say that it's a major disruption. Only 13% of the population.
That has to be night workers.
Well, I can disagree with that, because my thinking is, right, you and I both have insane schedules. That's the nature of our job. So it's like, well, honestly, this time change really isn't any different than me just coming into work a little earlier. But for the people who, I would almost wager the people who do have weird schedules like us are better off, because it's like, I don't know, it's not too much different than just working a crazy morning shift or an overnight shift. So, I don't know. I don't think 13% of the population should have that big a sway over it, especially since it is very helpful in the sense that we have plenty of daylight. We get more daylight during the winter. So here's some of the pros and cons. They say it's bad for your health. Changes sleep patterns, goes against a person's natural circadian rhythms. Well,
I disagree, because it in the middle of the summer, it keeps the time of sunrise and sunset roughly the same as when it is in the winter. Maybe an hour difference, really.
My thinking is, if anything, it'd be easier, at least as far as the circadian rhythm goes, because it is less yo-yoing of hours, right? But it's Look, so one study found that the risk of heart attack increases 10% the Monday and Tuesday following spring time change. What? Why would that be the case?
I assume maybe it throws off some people's sleep, and that can mess with stress or something in that nature. Is
I
what would assume.
guess.
I don't know how reviewed that study is. That seems like it would need years.
My
and years
question
of
is,
study.
what are the underlying factors of that 10%? You know? Like if like, again, I'm speculating, right? I don't have numbers to back this up. But what if 80% of that little 10% were smokers? Or, like all sorts of underlying bad health things. So
yeah,
I could see how that could be a reason, but I don't think it really flies for me.
I think people have trumped up this issue so much just to have something to rail over.
It seems to be unnecessary to me. 5 to 6% fatality increase in car accidents.
I would presume that's from lack of sleep.
Would be my guess. Here's the thing. I think... Oh, that's a cool little... Get your hoe ready. Well, okay, playing devil's advocate, if we have daylight saving time and everybody's an hour asleep less, then this might be harder to do. Might take longer to get your hoe ready.
True. But also another devil's advocate in the wintertime, whenever the sun is supposed to, in the places where the sun doesn't rise until 10 o'clock in the morning, you don't think driving at night causes...
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, right? I think my guess, again, just speculating, my guess would be that if we were to get rid of daylight saving time, then these numbers would actually probably increase for a solid several years, just because, like you mentioned, right? Now we're going to have darkness at times we never did, and light in times we never did, and the amount of getting used to is going to increase, right? It's like, oh, it takes a day or two to adjust versus, well, it's going to be dark for the next 3 months. I'm just going to have to, and then you have longer.
Yep.
And obviously you do have some adjusting, like, okay, so now the sun sets at 8 instead of whatever. But it's like, it's still, I think, I don't know, it seems to me more balanced for the circadian rhythm. But that's just a guess. It's just a guess. So we'll be fair. We'll go over all the pros and cons.
Yeah. Real quick, we do have a comment on the Twitch.
Oh, we do.
Tyler said that he's only here for Parcel. Tyler,
can we pull out Parcel?
I don't think so right now. She's out doing God knows what. She's temporarily banned from the desk because she almost turned my computer to Spanish somehow, and I'm not sure how she managed to almost do that.
Parcel is the cat, by the way.
Yes, it's my cat. She's 7 months old. She's currently in a cone because her eye is healing from something she had on her eye, but that should be off hopefully within the next week.
Good. Yeah, so daylight savings time, longer daylight hours promote safety versus bad for your health. We kind of went over that one. Good for the economy. Ooh, there we go. And also drops productivity. What? Sleepy Monday because it's the most sleep-deprived days of the year. How are people so bad at adjusting?
I think the problem is people don't want to go to bed an hour early.
I mean...
Take melatonin. I'll tell you, melatonin works dreams on me.
That is weird. It's like... And, I'll admit, with my job and stuff, I have trouble getting a sleep schedule. I have trouble with all of that. So when people are complaining about 1 hour once a year, it seems a little silly to me.
That if I get less than 8 hours of sleep, I'm a zombie the next day. I'm a zombie normally. My body just cannot handle less than 8 hours of sleep.
So I know everybody's like how much they need of like how much they require for sleep is just genetic and random, essentially. I happen to need way more sleep than most people. I need like 9.5 hours to be actually like, not quite that much, but I need a lot. So I'm just tired all the time anyway, and I drink copious amounts of caffeine. That's the only way I can live, because I don't have enough time in my week to sleep 9 hours every day. I just don't. I'll get 6 or 7. That's about it.
I'll get 6 on a bad night, and I'll struggle through the day.
What's the worst you've had to go to work sleep deprived?
Oh, my friend. Oh, over the summer, I had a 6 a.m. shift, and it was like the last week that I was at home, and so my friends wanted to take me out to Buffalo Wild Wings. Pretty sure I didn't get back home until almost 2 in the morning. Then I had to shower and then go to sleep right away.
Ooh,
That wasn't fun.
I don't bet. I think my worst, at least since I've started this job, was probably like 3 hours or so. It was. I had a quick turnaround between an evening and a morning, or maybe it's the other way around. But I tried to go to bed. I laid there, couldn't sleep at all, so I ended up going to work with like 2.5, 3 hours of sleep, and it was just it was not good. Well, so that's the pro con of daylight saving time. Where do you fall? Do you think daylight saving time is good? Do you think it's bad? Please tell us in the comments. Or
Hey,
don't.
maybe we'll put a poll. We should put a poll up on Twitter. See
We should. We'll do that. We'll put a poll up and see what people think. Personally, I don't care either way, but it seems more useful than not. But
it would break everything to change it now. Just keep it.
yeah,
It's not a big deal.
I could be persuaded the other way, but I think regardless, we just need to pick something and stick with it. Just pick something and stick with it.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about it every year. Every year we act like this is the last time we're going to get rid of it this year.
Well,
That's
Arizona
never
just
yet.
straight up said that we don't participate in that.
Yeah. I don't understand. So can you just, as a country, decide what time you have? Is there no...
Yeah, I guess for just a few months it just changes what time zone you're in.
I know, but like, because time zones are based off of longitude, right?
Not necessarily. If you look at some of the time zone maps, they make no sense.
Oh, okay.
They
See,
make no
I
sense.
don't know what
like,
I'm talking about.
Like Eastern time, like bends back to the west, and it's
I'm just...
maybe has something to do with like how the light, like on higher latitudes, is different than closer on the southern
Maybe,
ones. I'm not an expert on it.
I don't know. I was just wondering if, like, I don't know, like Canada or something can just decide, hey, we're actually 5 hours later, or just like something insane.
Yeah, I don't think you do that.
Well, not that you would, but like,
yeah,
theoretically, could you? Like, could Texas
Could.
just decide to be 9 hours ahead?
could.
That's weird. I don't know how it works. But yeah, that is the based reflectivity segment. What a great introduction. We didn't say anything. It was great. That was good though. I mean,
It's a good debate. When we get some different topics on there,
we'll get more
get
heated.
real spicy.
Yeah, we'll
get some.
have to
guests
find
on.
something me and Will disagree on, and we'll just box it out, smack each other verbally.
If we get $1,000 in donations, we'll box.
One of us is gonna have to fly to the other, man.
Yeah, 1,000 plus plane tickets.
Yeah, that's what it'd go to, is the plane ticket. I'll fly you down here. We'll box, and then we'll go to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Sounds good. Yeah, because I don't have one here.
Really? You don't?
Nope. Don't have a Buffalo Wild Wings here in Steakhouse. We don't have a Chili's either. We have what do we have? We have
What do you eat?
kind of your other stuff. You get like McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, all that kind of stuff. We have an Applebee's, which
Okay.
I must say, I understand it's a favorite of the meteorology community to stop at an Applebee's after a storm chase. Applebee's is mid.
Of course,
It's
it's mid.
It's not good.
Of course it's mid. I have. Oh my gosh! If he ends up watching this, he's gonna laugh. But I have an ongoing debate with my friend, used to room with, and I just mentioned something about, oh yeah, Applebee's is okay, and he was like, no, Applebee's is bad. I went to Applebee's once and it was really bad. I was like, okay, so you went to one bad Applebee's, and so all Applebee's are bad? And he was like, well, I guess I was told him I went to the one in Amarillo. He's like, well, I guess the one in Amarillo is the only good Applebee's or something. I was like, no, look, here's why it's good. It's good in that the food is average and acceptable, but it's cheap.
That's true.
That's why Applebee's is good. It's not like
any place
Michelin 5-star flavored food, but
look,
it's
any
cheap.
place
It's
where I
good.
can get a beer automatically gets a point in my book.
I think Applebee's. I haven't tried their wings, but I know they have that special where they do like unlimited wings for like $13.
Okay, this is kind of it's not really a reflectivity debate, but it's a slight debate. What are your thoughts on boneless wings?
Dude, I don't eat boneless wings.
Thank God. They are glorified chicken nuggets. Stop calling them wings.
It's a sauced chicken nugget.
Yeah.
I will correct myself. I will very, very, very rarely get boneless if there's like a deal on them. Like, oh yeah, $15 for whatever. I will put up with the lack of bone. I will put up with the lack of I'll put up with the lack of bone for a deal, or like if I'm trying to, like, if it's like a quick meal or something and I'm trying to like do something and I don't have time to scrub my hands every 2 minutes. Yeah. But no, bone-in wings always.
Yes.
Boneless is for 3 things: pizza, banana, and lemonade. That's the only things that should be boneless.
I could rock with that.
Boneless. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today.
What a way to end it.
On boneless pizza. I know he's already gone, but we want to thank Colton for coming in again. That was a great conversation. Amazing job as always.
If you can, tune in to OU Nightly. Even if you're not on the OU campus, you can catch them. They stream on YouTube, I think, all their broadcasts. They
stream on YouTube. They re-upload clips and videos. I don't know if they re-upload everything, but they re-upload a lot of stuff. And speaking of re-uploads, we did a little trial run with a clip. We're going to start doing clips of these episodes. So if you want to enjoy yourself some reflectivity, but you don't want to sit down for an hour and a half, we have, or will soon have, some clips up on the channel.
And if your attention span's even less than that, like everything is today, we'll have a TikTok soon to put clips on that are quick hits.
Yeah. Will's in charge of the TikTok, not me. So forward all complaints to him, and he'll probably take care of them.
I hate TikTok. We're only abusing it for the views.
What, you don't want the Chinese government?
They probably have my data already.
That's true. I mean, I will say this: everyone who's like worried about TikTok stealing your data,
Do you read the terms and conditions of everything you buy?
Between Google and Apple and probably the U.S. government, I imagine everybody's got everybody's data, so it doesn't really matter at this point. But yeah. Well, I think that's it. Anything else, Will?
No, that's good. Hey, we made it through this podcast without any technical difficulties. How about that?
We're not over yet. We're not over yet. Don't say that. All right. We'll see y'all next time.
Yeah, have a good one, y'all.
Yes, sir.